All right. Good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us for the Comet Sprint 23 review. This is the third of 4 total sprints for the Spring Work Cycle 2023. And all I can say is, man, does time fly by quickly when you are sprinting. And I'm going to turn things over to Tamsin, but remember that I'm recording this, so if you want to turn off your video to not be recorded, feel free to at this time. Tamsin, you want to tell us all the good things that were accomplished in this sprint?
I do. I want to tell us all about it. Let me do screen share. You can hopefully see blank Comet homepage.
Looks good.
Thank you. Yeah, so I want to start by talking about some of the continued dependency update work that we've done with Comet. You may recall that our scope for the work cycle was included some critical dependency updates across all the Surfliner projects, and that at the end of the first 2 sprints that we had completed those, with the exception of what we knew was going to be the largest and most significant, which is the Comet update. So what we've done over the last couple of weeks is ushered through support for Ruby 3 in our major dependency, which is Hyrax. You can see there's a new version number here, version 4.0.0 release candidate 2. That release is a Hyrax version number that was cut yesterday, that added support for Ruby 3. So this is my local setup for Comet running that Ruby 3 stack. I'm ironing out a few of the last details today for getting this deployed into staging, but we're really confident about closing this one out this sprint. You can see that there are a few sort of subtle changes to the UI styling, and that's because there's a series of major updates here running from Hyrax to Ruby to the search engine Blacklight, and also to the sort of low-level styling framework Bootstrap that all of this is based on. So these are sort of like updated Bootstrap stylings versus what we had before. We expect a little bit of fussiness like this still, but we're cleaning those details up, and we're sort of focused on getting the major piece merged this time, and we'll plan to do little style cleanups as we run into them. Okay. Cool. So that's Comet Ruby 3. This is now back to the deployed staging site. I have a few things that I want to show that we worked on this round. One of those is that early in the work cycle, we did some work sort of to get alignment on what the visibility model should look like for objects and file sets and collections in Comet, and a few changes to the sort of baseline stock visibility model were agreed upon across the campuses. We're glad that we got alignment between the campuses, because deploying separate visibility models was going to be something that we had to figure out technically. So we're happy to have alignment for the moment. And we did some of the technical work to roll those changes out. There's still a little bit more of this to do in the next sprint, but I can show you a couple of new visibility levels that we've put into place. Now let's not name it that. Let's name it like just, why not? And I'm going to add a couple of files here just for good measure. Oops. Okay, so we'll give this a couple of files. And I'm going to start by making this object accessible for Comet. And what we should see is that this object becomes visible to us. Yeah, so we can see it. So the Comet visibility level denotes anybody who is logged into this Comet interface should be able to see this object. This is in contrast to like public, where anyone who has access to any of the places where this object is published would be able to see it. So this Comet visibility is sort of like staff access. Okay, and if I edit this object, I can switch it to another new visibility. This one's a little more complicated, and what I expect to happen here when I hit metadata only is that the object here is going to go to public, and the files will go to private. So what this means is that everywhere, including in Comet, the various groups don't have access to the files, but everybody should be able to read the object metadata itself. So that is those two, and I should be able, if I do public now, I should be able to change off of that. Oh, did I do it right? Oh, I guess we're not able to change off of that setting. Let's flag that as an issue to iron out about this implementation.
I got it.
Thank you. So that's the visibility model changes that we've rolled out. There are a few more. I think we're planning to convert this Surfliner one to an institutional access or like IP-based authentication, and I think there's a few details to iron out in the next sprint about the visibility work. Another thing that I can show while we're here with this object, I guess actually two things really quick. One is that we have been continuing to do little UI changes to just improve how consistent the language is in the user interface. So this is an example where at some point this text was just a little more confusing. It may still be a little confusing, but also it made reference to the concept of a work, which we don't normally talk about in the Comet context. So we've changed the language there. And actually we should change that part to the within the work. Yeah. So we're continuing to make label changes. Oh, I can change it to Comet. Okay. And so we're continuing to make label changes to the the system in general. And then while we're here on this object, I can also show you, we've added a little reference count to the tabs here, so that you can see how many members of various types this object has. So if I add a component, click the add component button. That's probably the best way to do it. Sure, let's save it, and then we'll go back and add a second one, because why not? And refresh this. So you can sort of see how many member objects this this object has at the component and at the file set level quickly. That's a small ticket that we closed this sprint.
Tamsin, is it okay to jump in with questions?
Yeah, of course.
Is it going? I'm curious about the count for the file sets there. Is that, does that include any files that are a part of those components, or only files that are at the top level attached to that
only
object?
Files that are at the top level. I think.
Okay, so if there were files in those components, we wouldn't have a count of that.
Let's check it out. So if I go to component, I can add a couple of files to it. So this component knows how many file members it has. And the top level object just knows about its direct membership. So this is sort of indicative of the overall structural data model here. It's not generally assumed that membership is a transitive property in PCDM. I think there is an interest in having a broader structural view of sort of nested membership trees, but I think that that's a separate ticket. I think the scope of this one was just to make it easy to see what the direct membership of these objects were. Okay. I have I guess a couple more things to show about the batch process. So the first of those is that when we last showed import, we didn't have support for importing delimited style multi-value fields in the CSV. So I'm going to show that, and import with multi-creator. And the file that I want to import here, just like really quick, is So apologies if this is small and you can't necessarily see, but I'd like to show that the import that I'm about to run has two objects in it, and that each of those objects has a creator field that's structured. So within the comma delimited, we have a pipe delimited creator. Isn't that pretty? And we should expect two creators on the first object and 4 of them on the second. So let's go ahead and run that. We'll grab multi-value columns.csv. We'll create and validate. So my source identifier, yeah, so this is the raw metadata, and this is the parsed. And we should be able to see similar behavior on the second one. Okay, and if we run this import, we should see objects with those values get created. So that's cool. So that's multi-value field support for the CSV import. And then I have one more demo to show. Last sprint, we showed some work on this feature for importing objects that don't have a source ID in the CSV file, and we showed that having some problems where the objects would sort of become overlapped in this display, and therefore be hard to see. And we've fixed that issue. We're now generating source identifiers that are different for the different objects in a batch. So if we run this one, we should see 2 objects get imported. One and 2, and then I can use these generated source identifiers or the object ID in future imports to overwrite these objects. Okay, so that's the batch work. While we've been working on all of this, there has also been some non-technical, non-software work happening to put together a workshop to cover how workflow works. So that's this feature set, and how stakeholders can engage in the process of designing and at least understanding those workflows. So I think we'll have some news about that as we work towards wrapping the work cycle. Additionally, we have been doing some work on the Lark side this sprint, mostly just a little bit of work and mostly behind the scenes to get the Lark deployment in shape. And then also there has been some work happening at the Surfliner schema level to set the stage for Lark Comet integration. Our goal for the work cycle has been and remains to demo some kind of Lark integration. And we have 2 targets for that that we're planning on working on in the next work cycle, or sorry, in the next sprint, the final sprint of this work cycle. And that is so in the one case, that would be to sort of like specify what a controlled field what a controlled field's value set should be, and then be able to search that in the form. So if you had like creator 1, then we'd expect some kind of like type ahead selection to understand the details of the people identified by this, or the agents identified by this string, and sort of match against them and add the correct values to this form. So that's one place where we think we might be able to demo integration. The other is in the import process. And we think we should be able to demo validation of controlled fields in this batch import. We're exploring doing both of those integrations this sprint. Our original goal for the work cycle was to be able to show like one or the other of those. So we'll be happy if we can do that, but we're kicking off the next sprint with both of those goals in mind, and we think that doing the one should make the other quite easy. So we're hopeful about being able to do both of them. So that's a big deliverable for the next sprint. The other major thing that we'd like to be able to wrap up in the final sprint of the work cycle is the end-to-end shoreline integration. So that would look like importing a set of geospatial data with a relatively complete set of metadata and structural relationships, moving the resulting objects through the workflow and having them published to the Shoreline front end. We've been sort of orbiting around the various parts of that goal throughout this work cycle and the one before, and we think we're quite close to it. So we're hopeful about wrapping it up and showing you a real life shoreline ingest at the end of the work cycle. So that's what we have planned for next sprint. There's a little bit of time for me to take questions, and I think that I didn't do the thing that we promised that we would do, which is to assign a sort of facilitator to be fielding questions. So if there are questions in the chat, I have not seen them, and I need somebody to step in and share them with me verbally so that I can answer them.
Thanks, Tamsin. I think going back to the visibility that was worked on this sprint, I do have on my to-do list to create a ticket to make sure that the visibility switching between metadata only and public works. But Kelly brought up that for metadata only, I think it defaults to private, and a couple of us agree that it probably should default to Comet for the files. What do you think about that?
That seems like an easy change to put in place. Whether that's, I think we'd want to make sure we know what the details are, whether that's just for the files or for the objects and the collections as well. But yeah, I mean, that seems totally appropriate, and like it would also be easy to make configurable across deployments. So if one campus wanted the default to be one thing and one for it to be the other. That would be meaningful. We did make a point of adding support for sort of skipping putting the visibility in the CSV imports, precisely for the reason that that having a sane default seemed like a good thing to do. So getting that default set up right seems like a good idea. For the new object, and well, for the edit object form, it's sort of irrelevant. Whatever the current setting is what's going to be set. But for the new object form, the effect of changing the default would just be changing which of these things is checked when you open this new form.
And then somewhat related, now that you're here at this view, what's the difference between restrictions between Surfliner and Comet?
I think this Surfliner restriction we expect to go. I think this is just the default Hyrax institutional setting, and we have changes to make to it, including to its label. So I think you should ignore this completely because it will go away by the end of next sprint.
I think we discussed also getting rid of the private visibility in general. I don't see that listed among the ones that we had talked about.
I think that we have tickets open to do all of the work that we agreed upon and that we're expecting to wrap it up during the next sprint. What you're seeing now is a partially complete model with you're seeing the default Hyrax model with these two new settings added and nothing removed.
I see. Okay, great.
I don't recall off the top of my head what the scope of remaining work is, but we do have tickets open and in sprint for next sprint for the scope as defined.
Tamsin, can you reiterate what you just said about not reading the visibility from the CSV? Is that an option or?
Yeah. So if you include a visibility column in your CSV, then any objects that have visibilities in there should get set to the model that you see here. Okay. Accordingly, I think there are some details to iron out about that, and we have a ticket open to make sure that the metadata only and Comet behavior are working through the bulk import process. I think that there's some question about whether they do out of the box or whether we have some minor technical work to do to make that possible. I didn't include that in scope for this demo because we haven't done the ticket to validate that it works yet. But I guess to answer your question directly, if you have a visibility column, then anything with values in it will be set to those values. If you don't have a visibility column, or you have objects that have an empty visibility value, then you would expect those objects to get set to whatever the default is. Okay. The default, as Gabriella and whoever else was in chat flagged, is currently this private setting, and that may change between now and the end of the work cycle.
Okay, thank you for that clarification.
Anything else?
This is a really little thing, but it's something I'm curious about. When you were showing on the other view, the kind of view object page, the version number down at the bottom, is that a Comet version number specifically, or were you saying that's like a Ruby version?
Oh, yeah. So this is this is the, so it says Comet, but this version is the version of Hyrax, the engine that we based Comet off of. So in what you're seeing here is Comet v3.5.0, which is the latest it's the latest officially supported release. What you saw on my local host was the release candidate, the second release candidate for version 4, which is what we're pushing to get out the door to support Ruby 3. So it's possible that this will be the final release candidate, and that this exact like place in the code tree will be promoted to version 4, or it's possible that there will be some limited bug fixes or additional work happening, and then a subsequent release candidate, and then some other 4.0 will come out. But in general, with our relationship to Hyrax, because we are so involved as a team in maintaining that system as well, our approach has been to be open to sort of tracking the latest code, even if it's not cut as an officially supported release yet. So that's what you're seeing here is just a little reference for us to be able to see what version of Hyrax we're running at any given time. I think importantly, all of this footer text is stuff that can be customized and can be changed on a per campus basis. Though I think it's been a sort of a low priority to do so because it's not a public facing site.
Thank you.
Does that answer your question? I'm sure I gave you more information than you bargained
Yes.
for this time.
No, it totally does. Thanks.
Any more questions? All right, I'm going to stop recording. Thanks, everybody. What a really good sprint. I think everybody just shows how much work can get done in 2 weeks. This demo was really full of a lot of details and good stuff. Tamsin, I appreciate you demoing everything for us.
Of course.
Packed, yes, Jessica, packed with goodies. All right, so I'm going to stop.